Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. I'm so excited today to have Rabbi Jamie Cowland, who is the founder of Justify and the director of global outreach for Aish Torah in Jerusalem. Now, what is Justify and how did it start? So Rabbi Cowland went on a trip, and he had been running trips for over 16 years at this point for Jewish students, and he went on this trip to Thailand, and he was so impressed by the different aid organizations going on there. He thought, well, why don't we do a trip that really stresses the Jewish value of Tikkun Olam, fixing the world, and allows students the opportunity to really get into the very gritty details of what goes on in terms of the struggle for human rights and what's going on in the world today. So Justify today, you can take trips all over the world to Thailand, Nicaragua, South Africa, Sri Lanka, you name it. And when students go, they get the opportunity to meet with the locals there and see this amazing place, as well as really trying to create a better world. So how do you come up with a crazy idea like this? How do you change the world? How do you figure out the next big thing? So Rabbi Cowland and I go on a very deep discussion about this concept of living a life off the beaten path. And how do you cope with a career and desire to change the world? And when do you meld them and when do you separate them? So really, if you wanted to see how Rabbi Cowland has made his career off of thinking differently while trying to change the world, this is the opportunity. So I invite you to buckle up, take notes, and maybe check out a Justify trip. Rabbi Cowland, you are the CEO of Justify. You are the current head of global outreach for Aish Torah, and you've been serving the Jewish people for decades. Please tell me how you got to where you are today.
I came into Aish Torah when I was about 19 years of age, and at that stage of my life, I feel kind of very lucky because I was just introduced to the idea that I don't have to follow the normal template of how life is kind of supposed to go. You go to college, you finish college, you get a regular job, you do good for the community, if you kind of get married and have some kids, and life can be great. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, and it just kind of is. And before I kind of got into that, I had these series of experiences that led me to understand that I don't have to live by that template, that there's loads of other templates that I could work by in terms of building the type of life that I wanted. I'm not going to pretend that it was as considered and thought through and planned. I am no Tim Ferriss. That's not what I sit and do. But basically, I got introduced to the idea that I could kind of choose a different way of looking at who I wanted to be and how I wanted to be. And the thing that always fascinated me the most was human potential, Jewish genius, and just the fact that kind of normal people can unlock genius in themselves and do unbelievable things for the world. And so I've always kind of worked with programs that more accurately, less accurately, more successfully, less successfully, have kind of pushed towards giving people that experience.
Tell me a little bit about how you dealt with the uncertainty of creating a life that is not, so to speak, the beaten path. As you've gotten more along in your career, obviously having to shift and to change and to innovate, and also as a father and a husband, dealing with not having that clear career trajectory, although I don't know how many people in that trajectory genuinely feel secure, but how have you dealt with that?
That's what I think is really the point over here, to be professionals versus entrepreneurs. I'm not convinced there's that much of a difference. There's this new thing that happened in the Jewish world about 20 years ago where I don't know if it was new. I don't know if it was new, but maybe it was new as a kind of a massive thing, where regular Jewish people could just say, like, look, our community is not making it, and I'm going to be an entrepreneur in that way. I probably would have been a businessman. My mother would have wanted me to be a lawyer. I think I was about 36 when she stopped sending me emails of like online law degrees that I could do and stuff, right? But if I'd been a lawyer, I probably would have been an entrepreneurial lawyer. aka criminal. I don't know. Yeah. but you know, I would have been an entrepreneur, and I got the opportunity to kind of express that within that. Entrepreneurship gives you ownership of your own life, ownership of your own time, the freedom to innovate. It also gives you the pain and frustration of uncertainty. You know, so I think it's a little bit about weighing up levels of uncertainty. You can get fired in a profession, a business can go bankrupt. You know, but they don't as much as entrepreneurs do. So I think it's kind of about weighing up your own freedom and stability together, and kind of finding that balance where you can emotionally cope, and therefore, you know, build a family and not be irresponsible. You know, and I've kind of wavered between the two during different periods of my life. When
You're saying of being irresponsible?
Yes, like genuinely being irresponsible.
What was that like? Tell me about that.
It was expensive. It's very expensive. But I'm serious. You know, there's been times when I've worked more inside of an organization, and there's been times when I've worked kind of really outside of an organization.
Did you have anyone that was your mentor or your model for that type of a life?
I was very close to the founder of H, to Rabbi Weinberg, but he was an extreme entrepreneur, just, you know, entirely independent, utterly unconcerned about his own kind of well-being. I don't mean emotional well-being. I'm saying physical. Just very focused on trying to build and innovate and create for the Jewish people. So that was it. It was a great mentor. He built into me a certain intolerance of the system. I think I'm a little bit of a kind of a little bit of an anarchist, not anarchist, but a little bit kind of anti-establishment by nature anyway. So I definitely think I was attracted to that in him and into what H was about then. Creating revolution, creating change, switching up the template. But emotionally for me, it was just always about giving people back some choice. Giving people back, like, you know, whether it's Justify, whether it's H, like travel somewhere. Open your eyes and your hearts and your minds. The world doesn't have to be the way that it is. It isn't even the way that you think it is most of the time. And you can allow that to lift you and access just a different part of yourself where you can see the possibilities for your own life, for your own relationships, for your own accomplishments, completely different angle and direction.
What do you see as the biggest thing that holds people back from taking that trip or to going on to that?
I think people just don't know. I honestly think people view, you know, people joke about it all the time. You watch comedians, you know, they'll talk about like Americans. I mean, English is the same. I don't mean any distinction. You know, like Americans on holiday, you know, it's like, why don't they speak English here? And, you know, this, that, and the other. People live with a mindset that like what they're used to is normal for everyone. And so, and it just isn't. I mean, it just really, really isn't. There are completely different ways to live life, to measure life, to create value. Completely different ways. The Jewish people, for sure, historically, had a completely different definition of success, of accomplishment, of what makes life worthwhile, and completely different definitions. And they're lost to us. We have no idea. So I think that people can't understand why a new template is so valuable for them. That's kind of punctuated by the fact that we live in such a free and open society that you really can go and find a different template and bring it right back into the middle of Manhattan or the middle of LA or the most kind of culturally homogenous environments. Even though I know these are not homogenous cities, but they really do have a tremendous social pressure in terms of certain values and definitions. You can come in there and find 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 people living alternatively in multiples of those numbers. So people just don't know that.
Let me ask you, I think that one of the big challenges that people have is this idea, I don't know if you want to call it the 10,000 hour rule, but that people want to put time into a profession, put time into a career, because if you're consistently sort of going and trying to find, do you ever get good? Or is the challenge in life getting good at being on the path? How would you advise maybe a younger version of yourself or someone that's in a position of what should I be looking at as a constant in my life in order to find this level of open-mindedness and freedom that you advocate being so important to a person's development?
Look, I'm not that. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a prophet. But I tell you something. I mean, I have kids. I have kids who are in their teens and in their 20s. What I've been saying for a long time is something I was listening to Sir Ken Robinson. He gave a very famous TED Talk. It's a well-known TED Talk. And I researched a lot of what he said and listened to other speakers and read up on it a little bit. And he said something that was very life-changing to me. And it really was. And he said, does anybody here really know what the world is going to look like in 5 years from now? And anyone who thinks they know what it's going to look like in 15 years from now, they're lying. I mean, they're just lying. Are we going to have flying cars? Are we going to be... Just think about it, for example, if they do that train that they're talking about from San Francisco to LA or like whatever it is, what's that going to do to property prices if you can live halfway across America and work in LA on a 40-minute commute? We have no idea where we're going to be or what we're going to be. So I feel that the most important skill to develop now is entrepreneurship, is the ability to be a shapeshifter, is the ability to see circumstances as opportunities and to not seek permanence and structure as much as we used to. Now, of course we're going to need doctors, well, probably, and of course we're going to need, well, I mean, probably, of course we're going to need this and we're going to need that. Yep, probably, unless they figure out how to mechanize that, which they may well do, but I think that for a long time already, I've been advocating for people it's not about not investing in a profession or in a direction. It's understanding that in the same way that you might choose to become a lawyer or a doctor or a rabbi or open a business or whatever, but you're also going to maybe go to the gym and stay fit, because what good is all of that if you're really not well? Okay, so I think you have to hone your ability to move and shift and go with opportunity, almost like going to the gym. As a doctor, as a lawyer, as a rabbi, it doesn't really matter, because stuff changes, and it changes really fast, like wicked fast. I remember about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, getting an email from a notoriously conservative, right-wing, I don't mean conservative as the Jewish movement conservative, but a very right-wing conservative thinking rabbi. And he sent out an article from a Jewish thinker. He says, I don't normally like this thinker, and I don't normally send anything out for him, but he's 100% right. And he said his article was talking about how rabbis need to train as life coaches. He says, because we're not teaching Torah to most people anymore. What we're really doing, or what the most fundamental skill we need, is the ability to really coach people and this, that, and the other, And I was like, that was kind of wow to me. But then I thought about my time working as a rabbi, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of what we do most of the time. Like, that's really true, unofficially. So I think that's what I mean about entrepreneurship it's just reality now. And that's what I'm trying to push. That's what I would push anyone to try and build.
Now, do you see that role, and it's fascinating because I am very much in line with that and have actually been training as a life coach, because I feel very strongly that this is exactly what we need in a gym coach also, and all this kind of stuff that, we can really provide, so to speak, kosher value that people don't have to come here for the services, then go find meaning in some other realm.
Right.
Would you see yourself where you are right now as trying to bring that message to the unaffiliated, to the rest of the Jewish world? Or are you trying to say on an institutional level that you want to pull the Jewish people as the educators and have them take on that kind of role? What do you feel is a more crucial message right now?
Look, I think right now we're in kind of a very bizarre time for the Jewish people, where that we're my perception is that we're going through a very, very, very profound shift in human history. I think it's just about the Jewish people. I think the West is changing really, really fast right now. I think we're seeing it in all kinds of places. There's a lot of cracks appearing economically, definitely in terms of society, and just the norms that were kind of here and assumed. They're just not true anymore. And I think that kind of highlights for a lot of people, if they're enlightened in any way about this, I think again, it really shows people the idea that they can be a different template. Because when your own template, which you used to think was the only template, when that's crumbling a little bit, it becomes even more obvious, like, whoa, I'm not extreme, like maybe the Russians were right, this, that, and the other, but like, there's just different ways to live. So to me, that's going to affect the Jewish people as well. I think that that people forget how the Jewish law stays constant pretty much. I mean, there's things that affect things, and different societies and different times, and maybe different clothing and the occasional difference in minhagim and this and that, but it holds pretty strong. But the context through which Jewish life is expressed, that changes. It changes, and I think that we're experiencing that like a lot now. There's a lot of change happening, as I said, globally, nationally, and certainly kind of within our own tribe. So I don't think it's so much about rabbis learning to be life coaches, although I think that's a very good thing to do, versus not, or people that, my focus has just been wake up, as Bob Marley says, wake up and live. There's just more, we don't live in a world where the things that our parents were worried about, we have to be worried about. We certainly don't live in a world where the things our grandparents were worried about, we need to be worried about. Maybe we've got bigger things to worry about. It could be, there's kind of global destruction stuff that could happen that maybe they didn't grow up. But in terms of economic security, when in terms of just it's just not the same as it was, and the templates with which people live are out of date always. When the world's not changing that much, it doesn't matter that the templates are that out of date. When the world's changing this wicked quick, you can really spend your life just like not facing the right direction. And I think it's just tragic for people, whether it's spiritually, religiously, professionally, personally. You want to be facing the right way, and the right direction for people now is, as the economics develop in the world and people are further and further in the West from starvation, this, that, and the other, things like authenticity, things like living authentically, things like living philosophically, things like finding a space for spirituality and practice in your life in a real way. There's no reason for those things not to be present. Most people will agree that they enhance their lives. But until 20 years ago, who had time for that, right? We're so busy, we've got to work, and we've got to overcome anti-Semitism in the workplace, and we've got to this, none of that stuff's there. It's just not there anymore. It's just not there anymore. And so people feel empty. They've got time on their hands, and they're people are filling it with Netflix rather than authentic self-expression. So that's what I'm into trying to help people with.
So, okay, you sort of hit on something that I find is fantastic. So one of the things that we are aware about is because of all of the social media development, and especially if you're speaking to, perhaps this is unique to Americans, perhaps this is unique to people in sort of our building stage of life, but most people feel like there's no time, and that they're so busy running from this thing to the other thing. And you're saying that the opposite, that really now, more than ever before, there's the ability to self-actualize, and we're kind of losing that by the Netflix. So how would you advise someone now, take on the grandfather, father, trusted friend role? You're talking to a father with kids who's working, that's trying to build a future for his family. Where is his self-actualization going to come from? How does he do that?
There are kind of some really amazing things that you can do. Help you realize that you have time. So, simple things like just turning off your phone for half an hour. Half an hour is a lot of time nowadays just to go for a quiet walk. There are more sophisticated things you can do, like figuring out your income strategies and choosing a less stressful way to make money. Okay. Changing your definitions of success. These are more sophisticated things. Then it can get really sophisticated, which is, from a Jewish perspective, which would involve more learning of Torah and more understanding kind of Jewish definitions of life and how the world kind of really works. But that's black belt stuff for most people. It's black belt stuff. Most people, it's just cool if you can turn off your phone a little bit, turn off your phone or disengage a little bit from social media, and I don't mean that as like a diet from a diet perspective, like oh da da da. Yeah, again, we mentioned Tim Ferriss in the beginning. He wrote already like about 2010, or maybe even 2004. I don't know. In the 4-hour work week, just about the idea of going on a low information diet, the idea of just creating an email bounce about how you don't check email that often, and it's going to take 24 hours for you to get back to people. But if they really need you urgently, they should text you on this number. You'll be totally shocked if you do something like that. Like, oh, I only check email at 9 and at 4, or at 10 and at 4, because I'm just trying to serve you guys better. So if anything's urgent, please just shoot me a text. Okay, you'll get like 2 texts. Because most people are cool getting an answer the next day if they have to. There's stuff like that just slows down your life, like someone just slammed on the brakes so fast. And you do like little moves like that, which it doesn't work for everyone, like I said. And some people's jobs don't allow for that, and blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of techniques out there that just slow things down, and you realize, oh, I was just super busy being busy.
As you have gone through your career, I have no doubt that you have bumped into, with the people that you manage, with the people that you work for and work with and work under and have been mentored by, a wide variety of truly great, very revolutionary people. The question is, do you find over time that you're learning how to listen to yourself more, that you're integrating other people's opinion in a more authentic way, or that you're just kind of seeing more opinions and kind of creating, I guess, a vaster array of perspectives on life?
I see a shrinking number of true time. I see a lot of people make the mistake of a great Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, Rav Noach Weinberg's elder brother. So he said something really interesting when I was training as a rabbi. He said, look, you have to learn how to listen to what the Torah is actually saying to you, not put what you want the Torah to say into the words of the Torah. Don't use the Torah as a source for your ideas. Rather, have the courage to allow your ideas to be formed by what the Torah says, even if that's uncomfortable for you, or not culturally in line with what you would normally think. Okay, so I see there's a lot of people out there, in my experience, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this as much as the next guy, who and I mentioned it a little earlier, who are good at talking up their subjective ideas as if they're objective. And what I see is a shrinking number of truths. In my head, I think there's always been the same number, but my awareness. So what I see is that whether you're listening to Gary Vaynerchuk or whether you're listening to Tim Ferriss, right? Whether you're listening to Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, or whether you're talking to or whether you're listening to Rabbi Akiva Tatz. I think what you'll find in the end, obviously these people are very, very gifted and broad and have all kinds of different things to say. But when push comes to shove, people, it comes back. I see that it just comes back down to a few basic ideas. And to the extent that you're not real with them, or the extent that you're not true to them, you're going to hurt yourself, and you're going to hurt people around you, and you might accomplish a ton. You really might accomplish a ton, and everyone might think you're the man, yeah? But you're not. You're not, yeah? So to me, it's really about, as I said, it's really about truth-seeking and authenticity and those types of things, and the rest is just presentation skills.
What were you trying to do with Justify?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, when I started building Justify, people just thought like, Jamie, just tell people you want to go to Thailand or somewhere. They just take a holiday, chill out. What are you doing? Look, to me, I feel that there's a lot of kind of very, very kind of big problems in the world. Things that just really, really hurt when you spend time around them and make you think. And you may walk away not thinking there's not much you can even do about it, but there's just, they have all these like videos of like when they do these setups on the subway where like the guy's yelling at the other guy and being like really racist or being really anti-Semitic or being really sexist or gross or whatever it is, and what will the bystanders do? will they get involved or will they not get involved? You know, we live in a global world. I mean, you live in a global reality. Like, it's much more. It doesn't take 15 months for a letter to get to us from India. You know, it's like we can be aware of everything that's going on around, and I feel like we're a little bit like bystanders on the subway when we're aware of kind of really, really rough stuff that's going on, and people just kind of ignore it. They just totally ignore it. They pretend like, oh, my community, I've got enough problems. That's not what it is. That's not what it is. Most of the time, people just don't care that much, or they don't think about it that much, or they're just not aware. So, to me, there's a human sensitivity or development that comes from just being more aware of what's going on in the world, getting information. It's a template-shattering experience to be in environments where you see other Western human beings choosing to live their lives in the service of others. It shows you and most importantly, perhaps, it shows you why values are important. When you spend time in a human trafficking environment, when you spend time in a place of tremendous urban poverty as a result of government corruption or business corruption, you begin to understand why, you know, from my perspective, why Jewish values, why they're so important. Because when you see like man-made values kind of just running wild, just running amok, kind of ad absurdum, it makes you realize, like, what on earth is going on? So I tried with Justify to pick problems in the world that everyone can agree with. Probably my most favorite quote of all the years on Justify was when there was a woman, amazing woman. I don't even know if she remembers saying it to me at the time, but her name's Natalie Silverleaf. She's an amazing woman. She did my first trip. And she's, you know, we're not cut from the same cloth at all, religiously or spiritually, you know. Very moral woman, very deep woman, very spiritual person, of course, but not cut from the same cloth. And she said to me as follows: Jamie, I profoundly disagree with the way that you express, you know, Shabbat, yeah? But we're all absolutely ultra-Orthodox when it comes to human trafficking. Well, you know, so I just tried to find causes that everyone could agree on. Problems that everyone would feel moved by, and just to begin an urgent and intelligent conversation about the role of values in our lives and other people's lives, taking responsibility more broadly.
And it's so interesting because I think in our Western culture that there's a certain pristineness about all of us, and that we don't really see how a person's moral decisions can have such a massive impact. And by going and seeing in parts of the world where this stuff actually does happen, it's not so, you know, pristine. I was speaking to a bunch of students and we were talking about euthanasia. I was saying just because someone was wearing a white lab jacket and it's in a clean hospital doesn't change the moral question involved. And so it's fascinating if you can take a group of people or even yourself to go see sort of a bigger picture of what's going on. It does make so much of an impression. That being said, you are now the global director of outreach for Aish Torah, which for so many years has been a pioneer of outreach. So it's really it's a big position. And as living in a pristine world, what do you feel is the biggest challenge or opportunity that's facing the Jewish people that you really want to work on? And how do you see yourself accomplishing it?
You know, the CEO of Aish Torah, you know, Rabbi Steve Bergs, he mentions all of the time that, like, every Jew should have the opportunity to learn Torah. They should have an opportunity to just interact, to really taste it, to see Jewish values in action, and to have that kind of really authentic, unique experience. And Aish Torah has this unbelievable facility and building opposite the Western Wall. So my initial goal personally is in this role, which is to try and bring more people to have that experience. And my intention is that experience should be an authentic experience, that it should not be a coercive experience, that it should not be a bait and switch experience. It should be, you know, an authentic, beautiful experience for people who want to have the opportunity to sit opposite the Western Wall and figure out for 5 minutes, for 5 days, for 5 weeks, you know, for 5 months, whatever it is, what does being Jewish really mean? And to be able to do that in an environment that supports them and respects them is really important to me. But the main thing that I think we're facing as a nation is a misrepresentation of what Jewish values are about, and a lack of real opportunity to kind of independently and authentically engage with them, and be in a free environment, to be allowed to draw the conclusions that you draw. So for me, whether it's for people in their 70s or people in their teens and everything in between, married and singles and more connected and less connected, we want to give everyone the opportunity to come and to learn and to be inspired, and then to take that home and to continue to learn and to grow and to be inspired, and to bring more people to come and to grow and to learn and to be inspired. Because in the end, that's what we do. That's what the Jewish people do. And that's what we are. So I see this kind of as a microcosm a little bit of Jewish life. And I hope to try and be able to stimulate that. There's a really capable team over here. There's kind of some pretty amazing people working here and it's got a pretty incredible history and a really solid focus. So, I hope to be able to play a role in building that out.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.